questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Assistant Secretary Fee, I was glad that we've talked a lot about the U.S. African Leaders Summit. I know you just answered questions on the commercial piece. I just wanted to make sure the State Department has sent out guidance and materials on implementation other than what's publicly available to the embassies and missions.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, just to update you, we established a website for the Leader Summit in December, and we're now going to transfer all of the programs and activities. We have at least 19 different departments and agencies who are moving in many ways, and we want to have points of contact so we facilitate follow-up.
Okay, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. I know when I was traveling on the continent, some of the ambassadors were still waiting for that guidance. I know we've also talked about Sudan a few times already. I'm particularly concerned by what we've seen in West Darfur, ethnic-based killings against the non-Arab Masalit tribes people by the RSF, and we know that the highest risk of atrocities and crimes against humanity and genocide is previous atrocities, and obviously, unfortunately, this region has seen decades of these kinds of killings. What is the State Department doing to address these killings, gather evidence, and proactively try to prevent another genocide in the region?
Thanks for highlighting the horrific crimes that are taking place in the Darfur region. We mobilized very quickly following the outbreak of the conflict to work with our colleagues in the Bureau, CSO Bureau, to establish something known as the Sudan Conflict Observatory, which has already begun publishing photographs and other images and documents to describe what's going on, including in the Darfur region. As you may have seen last week, we issued a statement in reaction to the assassination of the governor of West Darfur, and we've spoken directly to these problems, both publicly and in Jeddah, where we have been meeting with a delegation from the RSF, as well as through our engagement with the leadership of the RSF. The initial attention focused on Khartoum, because it was unusual to have that kind of fighting in a nation capital. But as we feared, given the RSF base in Darfur, the fighting has spread there.
I wanted to also ask you about U.S. policy on Mali and specifically MINUSMA. Now that we're likely to see a withdrawal of MINUSMA, how is the U.S. working with the UN to ensure an orderly and responsible withdrawal of troops, and how does this decision impact the new U.S. strategy towards Mali?
This is a deeply regrettable decision, which is one in a pattern of regrettable decisions by the transitional government that will threaten the interests of the people of Mali. As you know well, once a government withdraws consent for a peacekeeping mission, it's not possible to keep the mission on the ground. But it's one of the largest missions in Africa, and we will need to work responsibly together with other members of the Security Council, as well as with the transitional authorities, to make sure that the drawdown does not worsen the situation. The choices that the transitional government has been making have been the subject of concern and criticism by the United States and other partners, and to their partners in the region who are also concerned about the impact the deterioration of the situation will have on their interests.
Thank you. And lastly, I mentioned in my open remarks President Biden's support for the AU to become part of the G20. There's wide-ranging support for that here in Congress and the international community. When do you expect this to happen?
It's our expectation that that should take place this year, likely in the fall. And I'm glad you've raised that point, because one of the important outcomes of the Leaders Summit was our effort to elevate Africa in the global conversation. So not only the G20, and thank you for your legislative reinforcement, also support for an African permanent seat on the Security Council. And I wanted to mention, in response to an earlier question, that Secretary Yellen is undertaking an effort to update the IFEs and the MDBs to make sure they're fit for purpose to meet the challenges that African nations face.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that, and please count on us if you need anything in that regard, and we look forward to working with you to make sure that Africans actually get a say in the decisions that are often being made about them. So thank you. I yield back.